Jason Statham leaned back in his chair at the press conference, arms crossed, completely relaxed. The room was full of reporters, cameras, bright lights, and the kind of electric tension that happens when two famous people are in the same room and everyone is waiting for something to happen. Steven Seagal sat just a few seats away, older, more decorated, a man who had spent decades being called a legend, a man who had built his entire identity around being untouchable. Then Seagal turned his head, looked directly at Statham, and said it, out loud, into the microphones, in front of everyone. "You're just a stuntman who got lucky. A movie cowboy playing dress-up in a martial arts world he doesn't belong in." The room went completely still. Not the kind of still where people are being polite, the kind of still where every single person in that room stopped breathing at the exact same moment because they couldn't believe what they just heard. Cameras stopped flashing, reporters stopped typing, even the air conditioning seemed to go quiet. Everyone turned to look at Jason Statham, and Jason Statham did something nobody expected. He smiled. Not an angry smile, not a fake smile, a slow, quiet, completely calm smile. The kind of smile that comes from a man who has been waiting a long time for exactly this moment. He leaned toward the microphone in front of him, and his voice came out low and steady, and so confident it almost hurt to hear it. Name the day, name the place. No cameras, no scripts, no stunt coordinators. Just you, me, and the truth. And from that single sentence, one of the most talked about moments in martial arts history was born. Before we get into what happened next, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from, because this story, this real story about respect, ego, and what happens when assumption meets reality, this one hits different. This one is for everyone who has ever been looked at like they don't belong. This one is for everyone who has ever been called just something by someone who didn't know their story. Let's go. Steven Seagal had been a name in martial arts before most people alive today were even born. He wasn't just an actor who learned a few moves for a film. He was a genuine 7th Dan black belt in Aikido. He had trained in Japan. He had taught thousands of students. He had opened his own dojo. He had built a real, documented, verified martial arts career long before Hollywood ever came knocking. That mattered. That was real. And for decades, it gave him the kind of confidence that slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, turns into something else, something heavier, something that stops looking outward and starts assuming the world owes it a permanent bow. Jason Statham came from a completely different world. He was a competitive diver in his younger years, then a model, then somehow, almost accidentally, an action star. But here's what most people never paid close enough attention to notice. Jason Statham never stopped training. Not for cameras, not for roles, not for validation. He trained because he respected the craft. He trained in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, in kickboxing, in boxing, in functional strength conditioning, in real movement patterns that professional fighters actually use. His coaches were not hired for the film. His skills were not choreographed for the audience. The work was real, and it had been real for years, quietly, consistently, with zero fanfare. But because it happened in gyms instead of in front of cameras, because it wasn't announced or marketed or stamped with a ranking certificate, most people never gave it the weight it deserved, including Steven Seagal. That was his mistake. The match was arranged for 3 days after the press conference.
Has someone ever underestimated you?
An old boxing gym in downtown Los Angeles, on a quiet street where serious fighters had been training for decades. The kind of place that doesn't have fancy mirrors or brand logos on the walls, just concrete, heavy bags, chalk dust, and the smell of real effort soaked into every surface. Neutral ground, sacred ground. The terms were simple. 3 rounds, 3 minutes each. A certified referee, A small group of witnesses, one journalist with a notepad, one cameraman under strict instructions that nothing would go live until both men agreed. No crowd, no hype, no production team, no safety net. Stephen arrived first. Black SUV, entourage, 2 trainers, a manager, and a quiet, calm confidence that filled the room the moment he walked through the door. He began warming up immediately. His Aikido footwork was precise, his shadow work smooth and fluid. Every movement carried decades of muscle memory. He looked exactly like what he was, a veteran, a master, a man who had done this 10,000 times. Jason arrived 15 minutes later, alone, a plain gym bag over one shoulder, gray shorts, white compression shirt, hand wraps that had clearly seen hundreds of sessions before this one. He walked in, scanned the room once, dropped his bag in his corner, pulled out his gloves, and started stretching. No speeches, no eye contact, no performance, just preparation. The referee, a veteran official who had overseen hundreds of professional and semi-professional bouts, looked at both men and felt the weight of the room pressing down on him. He had refereed fights for money, for titles, for pride, but this felt different. This felt like something older, something that wasn't about a belt or a purse. This was about truth. He called them both to center. 3 rounds, clean technique, respect at all times. Both men nodded. Stephen extended his hand first. Jason took it. A firm, professional handshake. No malice in it. But then Stephen leaned in just close enough that only Jason could hear him, and he whispered with that classic Seagal confidence, that slow, certain drawl. "Don't embarrass yourself out here, movie star." Jason didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't react with even a flicker of emotion. He just looked at Stephen for one long, quiet second, then stepped back to his corner and rolled his neck once. His eyes said everything his mouth didn't need to say. The bell rang. Round 1 started exactly the way most people expected.
Jason won the fight, but Seagal won his dignity back. Who was the real winner?
Steven Seagal came forward like a man who had already won. His Aikido was clean, controlled, and genuinely impressive. He moved with the fluid, water-like quality that real Aikido masters develop over decades. He wasn't showing off. He was being exactly what he was, a trained martial artist who knew his craft deeply. He went for wrist control first, reaching out and attempting to lock Jason's lead wrist, a classic technique designed to redirect force and compromise the opponent's balance. It was textbook. It was clean. Against most opponents, it would have worked. But Jason twisted his wrist inward, stepped to the outside, and slipped free like smoke through a window. Stephen's eyes narrowed. That wasn't supposed to happen. Jason didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't react with even a flicker of emotion. He just looked at Stephen for one long, quiet second, then stepped back to his corner and rolled his neck once. His eyes said everything his mouth didn't need to say. The bell rang. Round 1 started exactly the way most people expected. Steven Seagal came forward like a man who had already won. His Aikido was clean, controlled, and genuinely impressive. He moved with the fluid, water-like quality that real Aikido masters develop over decades. He wasn't showing off. He was being exactly what he was, a trained martial artist who knew his craft deeply. He went for wrist control first, reaching out and attempting to lock Jason's lead wrist, a classic technique designed to redirect force and compromise the opponent's balance. It was textbook. It was clean. Against most opponents, it would have worked. But Jason twisted his wrist inward, stepped to the outside, and slipped free like smoke through a window. Stephen's eyes narrowed. That wasn't supposed to happen. Jason didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't react with even a flicker of emotion. He just looked at Stephen for one long, quiet second, then stepped back to his corner and rolled his neck once.
His eyes said everything his mouth didn't need to say. The bell rang. Round 1 started exactly the way most people expected. Steven Seagal came forward like a man who had already won. His Aikido was clean, controlled, and genuinely impressive. He moved with the fluid, water-like quality that real Aikido masters develop over decades. He wasn't showing off. He was being exactly what he was, a trained martial artist who knew his craft deeply. He went for wrist control first, reaching out and attempting to lock Jason's lead wrist, a classic technique designed to redirect force and compromise the opponent's balance. It was textbook. It was clean. Against most opponents, it would have worked. But Jason twisted his wrist inward, stepped to the outside, and slipped free like smoke through a window. Steven's eyes narrowed. That wasn't supposed to happen. Jason didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't react with even a flicker of emotion. He just looked at Steven for one long, quiet second, then stepped back to his corner and rolled his neck once. His eyes said everything his mouth didn't need to say. The bell rang.
Stephen heard the words, but he wasn't really listening to them. He was listening to something else. The thing inside his own chest that very few people with his level of fame and reputation ever allow themselves to hear. He had underestimated Jason Statham. Not a little. Deeply. Completely. He had walked into this gym not as a competitor, but as a judge who had already decided the verdict. He had come here to confirm what he already believed, not to actually test it. And now the test was happening, and the result was not the one he had written in his head. He stood when the bell rang for round 2, and he came out completely different. Aggressive, powerful, determined. He threw combinations with real intent behind them, palms, elbows, rapid angle shifts. Jason blocked most of it, his guard tight and efficient, but one clean palm strike caught him on the shoulder and spun him slightly sideways. Steven felt it. The energy in the room shifted. He could feel the witnesses leaning forward again, but this time in his direction. "Now you feel it," Steven said, low and certain. But Jason didn't react. He didn't get angry. He didn't get rattled. He didn't fire back with words. He just adjusted. He started cutting angles more deliberately, circling and pivoting, making Steven work twice as hard to find him. And every time Steven lunged, Jason was somewhere else. Slip, pivot, reset. Steven's breathing grew heavier. His legs started carrying a tiredness that his face tried hard not to show. And Jason, still calm, still controlled, still looking like Tuesday morning practice, started reading him like a book that was open to a page he had already memorized. Midway through round 2, Steven made the decision to go big. He stepped back, set his feet, and launched into a spinning technique, a full 360-degree rotation with a ridge hand strike aimed at Jason's temple. It was the kind of technique that takes years to develop, the kind that, if it lands, ends arguments immediately. But Jason saw it before it started. The shift in Steven's weight, the slight opening of the hips, the tell in the shoulder. Jason didn't panic. He didn't rush. He simply stepped in at exactly the right moment, moved inside the arc of Steven's spin, trapped his extended arm with both hands, and transitioned into a controlled grappling position. For 5 full seconds, Jason held Steven's arm locked, balance compromised, movement restricted, options gone. Steven tried everything. He tried twisting free. He tried using his free hand to create space. He tried Aikido footwork to generate an angle. None of it worked. Jason held him with perfect technique, not with aggression, not with force, with positioning and precision that only comes from genuine training. The referee watched closely. Clean, technical, no danger, no showboating. Steven finally created just enough space to slip out, rotating his weight in a way that used his Aikido background to break the grip. He stepped back, breathing hard, face flushed. And then he threw a wide hook that had way more emotion in it than technique. Jason ducked under it without even hurrying, circled out to his left, and for the first time since the bell rang for round one, he smiled. Not mean, not mocking, not the smile of someone who wants to make you feel small. Just a small, real, quiet smile. The kind that means, I see you, and I respect you enough to be honest with you. Then he said something that nobody in that room expected. Respect the process, Stephen. 4 words, but they landed like a full weight class of truth, and everyone in that gym felt the impact at the exact same moment. Stephen froze, his fist still raised, his chest still heaving, his mind suddenly somewhere very far from that ring. The bell rang. Round 2, Jason. During the break, Stephen's trainer, Marcus, a man who had been by his side for 15 years, leaned in close and spoke in a low, urgent voice. He's the real deal, Stephen. His footwork is textbook. His transitions are clean. His cardio is better than yours right now. You need to adapt, or this ends badly. A cameraman near the ropes with a hot mic running caught every word. Stephen didn't respond. He just sat there, towel in his hands, staring down at the mat between his feet. And then he took the longest, slowest breath, the kind that doesn't just fill your lungs, the kind that resets something deeper. And the entire gym waited for the bell. Type HBL right now if you think Stephen was about to face something way bigger than a fight. The final bell rang. Both men came to center, but the room felt completely different now. The posturing was gone. The performance was gone. What was left was just 2 people in a boxing ring with nothing between them and the truth. Stephen's face had changed. The arrogance that had defined him all week at the press conference, in the warm-up, in round 1, was gone. What was replaced it was something quieter, something that looked a lot like a man who had stopped trying to prove something and started trying to understand something. Jason came forward steady as ever, clean, calm, present. They exchanged strikes, jab from Jason, deflection from Stephen, low kick from Stephen, check and pivot from Jason, a wrist lock attempt by Stephen, smooth escape by Jason, followed by a light tap to the ribs. Stephen absorbed the tap, nodded once, smiled. A real smile, not a performance. "You've got the skills, Statham," he said quietly. Jason nodded back. His expression softened just slightly. "You too, legend." They circled again, breathing together now, moving together. The rhythm of the round started feeling less like competition and more like 2 craftsmen in the same workshop, each one respecting what the other had built. 45 seconds left, 30. And then Steven Seagal did something that no rulebook covers and no referee is trained for. He lowered his hands. Not from exhaustion, not from injury, not from defeat, from choice.
He lowered his hands and extended his right hand outward, open, palm up. Mid-round, no bell, no stoppage, no official protocol for this moment. Just one man deciding that the most important thing he could do with the time he had left in that ring was not win the round. It was to tell the truth. The referee's hand hovered near his stopwatch. Every witness leaned forward. The trainers stopped talking. The journalist forgot to write. Jason looked at the extended hand, then up at Stephen's face. And in Stephen's eyes, behind all the years of ego and reputation and assumption and pride, Jason saw something raw and real and completely unguarded. Genuine respect. Jason stepped forward and took his hand. The handshake was firm, real, unscripted. No cameras angling for the best shot, no publicists framing the narrative, just 2 men standing in the center of a ring, clasping hands, and both of them knowing exactly what it meant. The bell rang. The referee stepped in and raised Jason's hand in victory, but before he could even finish the gesture, Steven Seagal reached out and raised Jason's other hand himself, both arms lifted high, together. The witnesses in that gym applauded, not arena loud, not the kind of noise that shakes a building, the kind of applause that comes from people who have just seen something they know they will never forget. After the match, both men stood together at the center of the ring, gloves off, wraps loose, breathing slowing down to normal. Steven looked around the room, at the witnesses, at the trainers, at the journalist still standing in the corner with his notepad, at the cameraman who had been granted access to this moment with the understanding that he would protect its dignity. Then Steven held out his hand toward one of his trainers. His trainer placed a phone in it. Steven opened the camera app, switched it to record, held it up at arm's length, a plain, simple, selfie-style video. No ring lights, no script, no second take. He spoke directly into the lens. My name is Steven Seagal. I have been in martial arts for over 40 years. I have trained, I have taught, I have competed, and I have spent my whole career trying to represent what real martial arts means. He paused. His jaw was tight. His eyes were steady. I came here today thinking I had something to prove. I thought that my experience and my reputation would be enough. But Jason Statham just showed me something more important than any technique I have ever learned. He turned the camera slightly so Jason came into the frame beside him. Real martial arts is not about who has more titles. It is not about who has been doing this longer. It is about respect. It is about discipline. It is about growth. It is about showing up and doing the work and never assuming you are above being challenged. He looked directly at Jason for a moment, then back at the camera. Jason, you earned my respect today, not just as a fighter, as a martial artist. And I gave my word, so here is my word in front of everyone. He took a breath. I am donating $100,000 to the Next Generation Martial Arts Foundation, a charity Jason suggested that helps kids who cannot afford training get access to real martial arts instruction. I'm saying it here, right now, on camera. No takebacks, no fine print. He paused once more. And I'm saying one more thing publicly, right here, right now. Jason Statham is not a movie cowboy. He is a warrior. He is the real deal. And I was wrong to say otherwise. Steven lowered the phone. Jason looked at him for a long moment. Then he extended his hand one final time. Steven took it. And then they hugged. Real, quiet, completely unperformed. The kind of hug that doesn't happen on movie sets or at press conferences. The kind that only happens between two people who walked through something honest together and came out the other side with more respect than they came in with. The journalist in the corner was not writing anymore. He was just standing there with his notebook at his side, and somewhere between professional and human, he let himself feel what had just happened. The trainers nodded without speaking. The cameraman, a man who had pointed his lens on hundreds of fights over a long career, whispered something to himself, something quiet, something that sounded like, "That's the one." Now let's talk about what this actually means, because this story is not really about two famous people fighting in a gym. That's just the packaging. What's inside it is something that applies to every single one of us. Steven Seagal walked into that ring believing that who he had been was more important than who he was showing up as right now. He believed that the past, the belts, the decades, the reputation owed him the present, that he could coast on what he had built instead of continuing to build. That is a trap, and it is a trap that does not only catch celebrities and martial artists, it catches anyone who stops growing and starts protecting what they have instead. Jason Statham, on the other hand, had been doing the work in rooms where no one was watching, in gyms where no camera would ever point, in sessions where there was no applause and no validation and no audience, just him and the process, and the quiet accumulation of real skill built over real time through real effort. And when the moment came, the work showed up, the preparation spoke, the training gave its answer. That is the lesson. You do not control how people see you. You do not control what assumptions they carry about you. You do not control what someone with a microphone says about you in a room full of cameras. But you control the work. You control the preparation. You control whether you show up every day and build something real, even when nobody is watching, even when nobody is applauding, even when the person dismissing you has a longer resume and a louder voice and more trophies on their wall. And one day, when the moment comes, when you are finally in the room that it matters, everything you built in the quiet is going to speak. Not loudly, not with a speech, just with presence, just with performance, just with the undeniable, inarguable evidence of someone who put in the work and let the work do the talking. The story is not really about who won. It is about what Steven Seagal chose to do with the truth when it arrived. He could have walked out of that gym angry. He could have made excuses. He could have blamed the surface, the lighting, his age, the format, the rules, his preparation schedule, the phase of the moon. There are always excuses available for people who want them. Instead, he looked the truth in the eye and shook its hand. That is not weakness. That is the hardest kind of strength there is. And Jason, in victory, never once tried to make Steven feel small. He let the work speak, and then he turned toward his opponent with respect and built a bridge instead of planting a flag. Both men walked out of that gym better than they walked in, not because one of them won, because both of them chose to let something real happen. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. London, Lagos, Tokyo, Dallas, Mumbai, Karachi, Sao Paulo? Wherever you are in this world, let me know. And tell me which part hit you hardest. Was it the leg sweep at the end of round 1 when everyone in that gym realized this was not going to go the way they expected? Was it the 5-second arm lock in round 2 when Jason controlled a martial arts legend with pure technique and not a single word? Was it the mid-fight handshake in round 3 when Steven lowered his hands by choice and admitted the truth without anyone asking him to? Or was it the video at the end, the phone held at arm's length with no script and no second take, and a legend looking into the camera and saying the words people spend entire careers avoiding? Let me know in the comments. Your response helps me understand what resonates with you, so I can keep bringing stories that mean something. And if this story found you at a moment when someone is underestimating you, when someone with a louder voice or a bigger platform or more years on their resume has looked at you and decided you were just something, if this hit that particular nerve, type warrior in the comments, because that is what you are. Not because you win every round, because you keep showing up for them, because you keep building in the quiet, because you trust the process even when the process is invisible to everyone watching. Stay hungry, stay humble, stay consistent. Respect is earned every single time, in every single room, by every single version of you that shows up and does the real work. More stories are coming. Stories about people who were written off and kept going anyway. Stories about the quiet kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself. Stories about the moment when preparation meets opportunity and the whole room goes silent. Hit subscribe if you believe in earning it the right way, and drop a comment telling me what story you want to hear next. See you in the next one.